All right, we are live.
Good morning, Facebook. This is Jim Blythe, and I'm here today with Tim Snyder. We're going to be talking about the economic situation in this country, how it affects you and your family, how it affects your pocketbook. Tim is a great economist, Matador Economics. We'll be right with you in just a second. Share this, stay tuned, and be part of the Veterans Impact Show.
Welcome to the Veterans Impact Show, where our motto is Charlie Mike. Continue the mission. I'm your host, Jim Blythe, U.S. Navy veteran, and certified senior advisor. Join me as we feature veterans who continue the mission of leadership and commitment in our community after serving our great nation. Why, you never know who you're going to meet or where we're going to go. Welcome aboard.
Hey, what a great day. I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I've been sick for the last 2 days. You don't know how good it is to feel good when you felt real bad for a couple of days. Now, I don't have COVID, probably the flu. I may cough or wheeze, but I'm not in the studio because I don't want to give this to whatever I've got to anybody, but it's not COVID. So you can't get it through TV, right? So I want to say a very special thank you to DBTV Network and all they do for us to put us on Amazon Fire and Roku. We're on Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock with DBTV. Dave Brenner is a great guy. I'm very, very thankful to him. So come on, subscribe to YouTube, subscribe to Facebook. Help us build and get the word out. Now, this is also brought to you by Fairway Independent Mortgage, the Heritage Group. My MLS number is 311-548, and Fairways is 2289. We're an equal opportunity lender, and I specialize in helping seniors, and I work in basically 7 states. So if you want to know how to help a senior family with financing and with financial literacy and with planning, give me a call. I'm here to help. Now, I would like to introduce to you a guy I met, I guess it was about 3 years ago. Was introduced to me by a former boss of mine, a great man, Ed Bratton, who is with City Mortgage out of Lubbock. Tim is a mortgage banker, but more than that, Tim is an amazing economist, and he has specialized in the oil and gas industry for how many years, Tim?
Oh, probably since the middle 80s, so I'm not going to say how many. It's years.
You're not that old. But your experience now, what is the biggest industry in the United States or in the world?
Well, I'll tell you, probably the biggest industry is the governments of the world. But aside from the governments, I'm going to tell you healthcare's next, and then energy is the industry here in the United States that would probably take that spot. And the reason it takes that spot is government took over our healthcare. And so there's so much more of that within the government bureaucracy.
Then let me tell you, I'm not a big fan of government bureaucracy. We'll leave it at that. Now, where we are today, we have inflation at record levels. That affects everybody. You go to the grocery store, and people tell me, I go into the grocery store and I can't afford everything that's in my cart. I walk out with $300 worth of groceries that 3 years ago, I only spent $100 on. Gas, more than doubled. Oil and gas. It's a mess. Tell me, Tim, about what this situation is, and from your standpoint, what's it doing to American families as head of Matador Economics?
Well, first and foremost, Jim, it's probably most important for people to understand what an economist does. And I'm going to make this really simple. If you go to the grocery store and you buy the same 10 items today that you bought a month ago, and that price is higher and you recognize it, you're probably an economist. If you go to the gas station and you look at the price of gasoline, and you see that today that 27 or 25 gallons of gasoline that I put in my Ford F-150 pickup truck yesterday cost me $72. but a month ago that cost me $62, then you know that prices are higher. That makes you an economist because you understand those things. My discipline is called applied economics. And what I do is I take the information that comes, either macros or reports that come from the government or private sector. I tie that information up for the consumer or the corporation who needs to find a way to weather the downturns in maybe production or the upturns in their input costs, which is what a lot of what we're seeing today. So that's what we do. And prices are higher. Now, let's you're in the mortgage business, and we look at how we can help veterans and senior citizens and everybody that's in the spectrum looking at buying a house. And I think the important things that we have to look at are, first and foremost, what's the cost of the house. In 2019, the average cost, the median house for cost for a house in the United States was about $262,000. The average square footage on that house was about 2,600 square feet. Today, the average cost, the median cost for that house is about $453,000, and the average size of that house has dropped to 2,020 square feet. So there in itself, you see some physical barriers to entry for our people that want to be able to try to achieve the American dream, and that's buy a house. Now let's add to it what has gone on in interest rates. First and foremost, so for people to understand that interest rates from 2008, well, technically probably 2001 after the 9/11 issue, but after that time period, going through 2008 and the financial crisis, we continue to keep interest rates artificially low to stimulate the economy because we had so many things that had gone wrong. We had the dot-com bust. We had commercial real estate problems. We had the attack on the World Trade Centers and everything else that we had to deal with. And we forced interest rates low. And then we hit the pandemic in 2020. What we saw with interest rates then was interest rates, even though the discount rate might have been at 0%, that's the only rate that the Federal Reserve affects. So it's the only one it changes. Everything else is market driven from what the Fed does and what the Fed says because they control the monetary supply. So we want to make sure that we understand that rates were terribly low. Perspective. In 1985, I bought my very first house. That house had a 15.99% APR interest rate on it. It was ARM, which is adjustable rate mortgage, and it was a 3-year ARM, which meant that every year it went up till 3 years and then matured at 3 years. I had to roll it over. It went up to 18.99% before I started to bring it back down. So the American dream was gone. We've been through this before. Was gone in the early to middle to late 80s, and then things started to settle back. When we got down to 10%, I thought I was stealing from somebody when you look at where my interest rate was. And then when it got to 6%, I just didn't tell anybody out loud because I didn't want somebody to come tell me I was reading it wrong. So the facts are these. The 20-year average for a mortgage in this country is about 6 and maybe 6 5/8% over the last 24 years since 9/11. Okay. And so where we are today is right around that rate, to be perfectly honest with you. May actually be just a little bit lower than that if you look at the rate on the 10-year bond. So I can tell you we got real fat and happy with 2.5. I have one or two customers that actually had sub 2. I had a 1 7/8 and a 1 3/4. And you can't beat that. How do you beat that?
No.
You don't. You stay in the house, and you also stay there forever because you're never going to get out of it. Everything else will be more expensive. And if you try to upgrade or do whatever you're dealing with, now the price of that house has gone up significantly, almost doubled. And now you're going to pay interest and insurance on the double price of that house to keep even. And so that's a conundrum what we have in this market right now. And I believe it's going to be a bubble.
Well, we also have a problem with taxes. Now, different states throughout the nation, and I have friends in New Jersey, and they cry about their taxes all the time. Texas, we don't have ad valorem real estate taxes. We have other taxes. I mean, we have ad valorem real estate taxes. We do not have a personal income tax. Excuse me. So our ad valorem real estate taxes are pretty cotton picking high, maybe not as high as New Jersey or California, but that eats into it. And the other side of that question you mentioned is insurance. Whoa, yeah. Insurance has gone up. So could we back up for just a second?
Sure.
Because there's a point that I think we ought to take a look at. When this administration took over, they implemented a lot of rules and changes and et cetera. I remember oil at $100 a barrel, but the price at the pump wasn't anywhere near where it is today. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
Nope, you're right. So you're absolutely right.
So what's happened is they have put so many restrictions, so many oversight, bureaucratic costs. And I had a cousin who was a master rig superintendent, handled superintendents around the world. And he said, man, a lot of companies are stopping drilling or cutting it back simply because it costs too much, and trying to get permits is terrible. So when the administration says, oh no, we're not doing anything, they're making huge profits in the oil industry. Oil industry is not making huge profits. The government is making huge. So correct me again if I'm wrong.
No, I think that's pretty much right on track. And one of the things that you have to look at here is not just, that cost of production that we're dealing with here, but it's most of these companies, there's the big companies, the Exxon Mobils, the Chevrons, the Apaches, and I could go through a whole list of them, but Phillips and all of them, Conoco. If you look at those companies, a lot of them have their own cash, okay, that they can borrow from. They've got their own treasury. They'll borrow from their own treasuries to do what they're going to possibly do. If you look at the service companies, or actually the smaller than maybe the big 10 of all the oil companies, those companies go out and they borrow that money. Well, look what's happened to the cost of borrowing money. Not only has the cost gone up, but you've got a Treasury Secretary in Janet Yellen who says, we want you to, maybe find a way to de-emphasize the opportunities for fossil fuels and oil and gas. And she's telling this to America's banks, okay, and America's investment companies. So she's telling them, don't loan them monies, the hedge funds and those kinds of things. So if you look at where we stand with all that, the cost of money has gone up significantly, doubled, sometimes more than doubled, probably tripled in some cases. It's gotten much more highly restrictive. We've got this ESG stuff that's going on in this world, environmental social governance, and we've got now these greater advancement barriers within the marketplace to continue to do business the way we did them before. And now it does cost a whole heck of a lot more money. And that's the reason why our break-even costs are significantly higher in oil patch.
So when you go to fill up with your gas and it's costing you $3.40 a gallon here in Texas, and I'm sure in California it's up in the $5-6 range, that not only hurts your pocketbook and takes disposable income out, but you still got to get to work. For truckers and trucking companies, that's a huge increase in one of their main expenses. And I got news for you. The airlines, that's a gigantic. And so what you've got is a freight train, and I'm going to use this analogy, doing 200 miles an hour down the track. And you're saying, okay, everybody, we're going to go to electrical and we're going to stop this train right now. I've never heard a plan. I've never heard, how are we going to transition? How are we going to have the infrastructure? How are we going to do this? And I'm not faulting this administration completely. I'm saying it hasn't really been broadcast. It hasn't really been talked about. And one of the things I heard from a politician one time, he said, well, I don't want to tell anybody what my plans are because they'll shoot me down. Okay. We've got a political problem then in this country of governance. So when you raise all of these things, the vegetables that come from Arizona and California and from East Texas, the peaches that I love. And all of these things are costing more. Fossil fuels, petroleum, touches every aspect of our life. So if you raise that up, and you have just created a multi-level effect. So they never took into account what this was going to do all the way up and down the board. We don't want you to loan money to oil and gas. We want to be zero. You can't do that. You can't take a 200-mile-an-hour train and do a 180-degree turn in 50 yards. Can't do it without wrecking it. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about today is how do we take a look at things? How do we plan? What do we need to do? What do we need to be looking at? And that's important because I think, you said we're in a bubble. I think we're in a bubble as well. And I'm not sure I understand the whole thing, but from the 10,000-foot view, it doesn't look good right now. And our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, they're on a fixed income. And quite frankly, it's not the greatest fixed income in the world. And they suffer. Their families suffer. All of us suffer. And Tim, you explain, if you would, in a global economics, how the dollar is not being used as the currency of trade anymore. How can that affect us?
Oh my gosh, that's a big issue.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're about to go to a break. I can't hear the music, but somebody tell me, are we that close to going in for a break?
It's about another 90 seconds.
Okay, 90 seconds. Well, I'm at a disadvantage because I'm home. I don't want to give anybody the flu, but this is the Veterans Impact Show. We're here for you. We're talking about important economic issues that affect you and your family, from buying groceries to driving your car to buying a home. What is the most powerful stabilizing factor in a family? Owning a home. What have we done to that? We haven't helped it. Our overall plan politically doesn't work. This is Jim Blight. We're going to be right back after these words.
Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show, and thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation.
Boys and girls, I got to tell you, I'm at a disadvantage, if you can tell by my throat and my voice. I've been sick. Man, I tell you what, here's the good news, Tim. Here's the good news. I've lost about 3 pounds in the last 2 days.
Well, and you sound like Merle Haggard too. So that's good. Diana will love that.
Yeah, well, back when I did Armed Forces Radio, one time I tried to play the Love Doctor because my voice was so low, and that didn't go over real big on an aircraft carrier.
No, I bet it didn't.
Hey guys, we're talking about economics. Okay, from a global standpoint, I'm hearing in China that they are in a really constricted economic situation. Can we talk about a little bit about that and how it reflects on us or how it could affect us?
Yeah, China is the number 2 economy in the world, and right behind the United States, very close to the United States, but right behind the United States. They're having, they have overbuilt their their commercial real estate sector throughout China. and have some serious occupancy issues and revenues coming in from that deal. That hurts the Chinese economy. The flip side of that is it's being countered in oil and gas prices, primarily prices at the pump, by the strength of of demand in the United States. So for everything that we are accomplishing and growing from the demand standpoint here in the U.S., it's being countered by Chinese struggling somewhat. And I don't think we get the real story from the Chinese anyway when you look at what they're telling us. So, the facts, pretty much play themselves out when you compare economics, and that's kind of where it stands right now with those things. It's just not good.
If China had, pardon me, a major economic collapse, or I
Right.
wouldn't say collapse, but a really, really big setback,
Right.
would it affect us?
Sure it would. Yeah, we're in a world economy.
Okay. And in that, who is the biggest buyer of our bonds?
No, it's not
No.
China.
Not China? Okay, I thought that they might be.
Japan. Hold on to your hat. It's Japan.
Really?
The Japanese are the largest holder of U.S. debt right now. Used to be China. They backed off about 4 years ago. I don't know if that's by fiat or just by plan, but that's where that stands. The Chinese are probably number 2 holder in U.S. debt. They don't want to hold the risk, and there's a risk right now.
Yeah, with their antagonistic position towards Taiwan and Taipei, and the United States, that's kind of a not too good situation to be in. But that also affects us. And one of the things, my personal opinion, I'm not an economist. I'm just a mortgage banker, and I'm just an average Joe who happens to really love this nation because I have a home. And I got into the race long enough ago that I was able to take advantage of home ownership. It's worked incredibly well for me and for my family. But in doing that, we've got to take a hard look at some of these other countries. How about England? How about France? We're in France right now for the Olympics. Do they affect our economy?
I'm going to give you a nuanced answer. And the way that they affect our economy is the way that we try to emulate what goes on in France and Great Britain and Spain and, Italy, wherever you happen to be looking. We no longer have stepped into that leadership role. Jim, you used a term earlier and in the lack of command and those kinds of things. I'm talking lack of leadership here in this world. The United States used to be the world's most dominant free country and the leader of the free world. And we've pretty much stepped back from that as we try to mirror our government activities and those kinds of things with what goes on in Canada and France and Great Britain and Italy, and I could go on and on and on. And then we look at what's going on in the Middle East, because right now the Middle East is no longer a partner of the United States. We've got this new economic alliance that's developed between Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, the BRICS alliance that we're talking about, that now includes Saudi Arabia in their membership, and they're working, as we talked about this just a second in the first segment. They're working to to just replace the U.S. dollar as the world's trade currency, which was established by the Bretton Woods Agreement post World War II. And I say post, it was like 1945-ish before the Japanese gave up. But this was something that's a real concern. Second issue that ties to this is in 1974, Henry Kissinger made an agreement with the Saudi crown prince, and said to stabilize world markets, to help Saudi Arabia, which was a third world nation at the time and has moved itself up. I don't know if it's out of that category, but it's different than what it was back in the 70s. But we put together what's called the petrodollar. The petrodollar ran for 50 years. It expired in June and nobody did a thing about it. And the petrodollar says that transactions in oil and gas, international transactions in oil and gas will be done in US dollars. That was because of not only the full faith and credit of the United States, but the strength that there was in the volume coming out of OPEC and the Saudis. And Saudis were the de facto really ruling party within OPEC. That's gone away. And so those risk factors are back in the market. I write on this all the time, and one of the things that we write on, or what we talk about, is tripwires. Tripwires are those things that can trip us up and slip us into a position that creates havoc within our economy.
Okay, I can hear the music this time. Thank you, Nathaniel, for turning it up. It's kind of tough when you're a little bit congested, but this is Jim Blythe with Veterans Impact Show. We're talking about economics. We're talking about how it can affect you. And so we're going to be talking about maybe some ideas and plans to help you move forward through this period of time. You're watching and listening to the Veterans Impact Show. We're here for you, not only veterans, but across the nation. And we're here to help you. So give us a call, give us a chance, and tune in, join in, and be a part of Veterans Impact Show. We'll be right back after these words from all of our partners, and one of which is Fairway Independent Mortgage, my mortgage company, and we help a lot of people nationwide. We'll be right back after these words.
Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show, and thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation.
Hey, Tim, before we go any further, how can people subscribe to Matador Economics, the daily email you send out? And you are also on several, there it is. Thank you, Nathaniel.
Good job.
You are on several other programs, or at least another program. Where are you on, and how can people reach you?
Oh, Lordy, these days I'm just about everywhere. First and foremost, you can go to my website, which is, as you can see on the screen, www.matadoreconomics.com, and you can subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and it'll send me an email, and I'll put you on our email list. I write a daily commentary, a weekly quick facts that gives you the statistics from the standpoint of production and inventories and those kinds of things. I look at retail fuel prices. I also look at natural gas and where natural gas is, and it's just an abysmal price, and good stocks and all those kinds of things. I also have a radio program. I'm on every day except Fridays on KRFE out of Lubbock, Texas. Believe it or not, we cover the Permian Basin, Texas Panhandle, eastern New Mexico. That's the old Buddy Holly radio station.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, and trust me, parts of old Buddy Holly are still there. It's an antique, but it's just a lovely little old station. It's owned by Wade Wilkes, and he and I have a show called Ag and Energy and Politics with Wade and Tim, and we talk about where the world is and those kinds of things. You can find me once a week on Sirius XM Radio 1, channel 146 with Mark Willis, Road Dog Trucking, and all over the place. I've done a series of podcasts. I'm on a podcast, and I'm a contributor to Thomson Reuters when they need subject matter for their stories and the research that they're doing.
Wow.
Now, in looking about how do we fix this? Well, I'm not in politics, don't want to be in politics, but I would say to our politicians, you guys, there are a lot of very, very smart people, and you need to have a plan. You can't just jerk everything around, and you can't just say, we're going to do this and do that overnight. And I'm sorry if I offend some people, but it's across the board, in my opinion, and take it for that. We also have to have a serious reverential fear of the rules and regulations, because when they're abused or they're not followed, or they need to be changed, if we don't do something about it, then that's going to hamper us. That's going to hurt us. Now, let's talk about home ownership. If you're a veteran, without a doubt, the number one, and I don't do them. I used to do them a lot, but the number one, and Tim, you've done VA home loans. If you're a veteran, a VA home loan is the way to go. It is the cheapest loan. You can get in, you can get the seller to give you concessions for your closing costs. Man, home builders, matter of fact, Diane and I bought a home in April, and I mortgage, and the builder gave us a very, very nice concession that just about paid all of our closing costs. So we got into a house, 2,500 square foot house, 3-car garage, at a great price with no monthly payment, except we have to pay insurance, and now I don't have to pay taxes because I got disabled veteran status thanks to the PACT Act. That's something else. You want to know about how to get to the PACT Act? Call me. But I'm telling you, getting into home ownership, and you might say, well, if there's a crash, why do I want to do that? It depends on your market. If I was in St. Louis, I might be doing a different song and dance. But in Texas, good grief, Tim, how many billions of dollars of manufacturing are going into both the hill country as well as up in Sherman, Texas? I mean, it's unbelievable what we're doing. And
Well,
I think that,
Jim, it's also not just Central Texas, but you look at what's going on in South Texas with the LNG production and the economic developments going on in the Rio Grande Valley. It's astronomical. The state of Texas is exploding with opportunities.
oh yeah. So you want to get to the state of Texas as fast as you can if you're a veteran, and that's how you solve the. Matter of fact, we're the number one nation for having veterans in our state. And I'm involved in Navy League. I love the state and all of the tremendous benefits that they do. The Texas Veterans Land Board. You want to buy land out in the country, you can do it. There's all kinds of things. Hazelwood Act, help with education. But the other thing that I firmly believe as a veteran, if you haven't used some of your educational benefits, then take a look at what you can do to use your educational benefits to improve your worth in the marketplace. Because today's world is a high-tech world. And Tim, you've been a mortgage banker. You've set yourself aside from that right now. But my golly, the technology changes right now that are going on in the mortgage industry are unbelievable. We can close a loan in 15 days. My first mortgage loan that I did with Fairway was a purchase, and I just gotten here and they closed it in 20 days. That's unheard of. And so there are companies out there that are embracing technology. If you understand technology, and boy, let me tell you, Tim, I'm on a first name basis with everybody in our IT department. Trust me, I need all the help I can get. But further your education and go get certifications, improve your skills. To me, that's one of the most important things you can do. Would you agree?
I would completely agree. And I'll tell you, I gave your contact information out to a gentleman I spoke to a couple of days ago. He works security with one of the large pharmaceutical companies, and he's a veteran, and he's retiring, and he's never used his VA benefits and to buy a house or anything else that he's dealing with. And I said, you're missing the opportunity. Those opportunities were put together for you. And this is an honorably discharged gentleman working in a great big old world. He told me that his disability status was about 70%, but he had an appointment. I said, you go make that appointment and have a discussion with your VA advisor and talk to them about where you stand. He's got about 70% hearing loss in his right ear because he was on his security detail and for 7 years. And he said, I just can't hear out of my right ear. And I said, brother, you got a good issue here. I said, but let's find a way to make sure that he can get that, when he's looking at what his opportunities are and his next step, because he's retiring, living here in the DFW area, when he moves, use that VA benefit that he's going to have, because I'm going to tell you, he'll probably be 100% disabled.
Yeah, that means if you're 100% disabled, you don't pay ad valorem real estate taxes.
Exactly.
You get real good looking right then. But Tim, that's just part of it. And for people, I do the reverse mortgage lending. So I'm really talking about people that are past that retirement age and they're trying to plan. And I got a couple that I met with in McKinney last week that basically they were just good, hardworking, solid Americans. He was in the Navy. He was on ships out of Yokosuka, Japan. And they're struggling. All they have is their Social Security, which is about 95% of the people out there.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to do everything I can because he is not 100% there. So I'm not a VA accredited rep, but I'm bringing in a VA accredited rep. I'm having him he's got his paperwork now. We're going to see what he could qualify under the PACT Act because he was in during Vietnam in 65 or 66 to 70. He also could possibly qualify for the aid and attendance pension.
Yeah.
Now, I helped a family in Richmond, Virginia get aid and attendance, and that was like $2,400 a month. On top of their Social Security, that enabled them to pay for home health care. The PACT Act, which is the biggest change in veterans deals, if you want to know more about that, man, you get a hold of me. Diane can put up my phone number all day long. And let me tell you something, that's been a tremendous boon. I didn't have to go through a whole lot of hoops. Matter of fact, Michael Krause, who had a VA benefits in Waco for the state of Texas, literally drugged me in front of an intake person. And I had all kinds of issues of which I take care of myself. I'm doing great, but I felt, I don't deserve this. You know what? I got a disability and I got a check that helped pay for a lot of the treatments that I had. And all of a sudden I'm in this situation. So what can you do if you're retiring? Because when you're retiring, you're on a fixed income. You can get all the job certifications in the world and education. But if you're 70 plus years old, you're a Vietnam veteran, that dog ain't going to hunt. PACT Act is amazing. You want to know more about it? Just go to the va.gov or call me and we'll help you. That is one of the biggest economic things to try and help you offset what's going on in this economy. Now, let's talk about some other things. My son has an electric car. I think it's great. I mean, it's like being fired out of a catapult when you hit the gas or hit the electricity. My opinion, everything I've read, Tim, those things aren't sustainable. What's your opinion?
They're not. And here's the issue. There's a reason for that. First and foremost, the public, the country doesn't really care for them from a demand standpoint. There's not the demand that the big automobile manufacturers in this country were told that there was. But that's not the biggest problem, Jim. The bigger problem that we see is being able to maintain or receive the amount of power that we're going to need to drive these things. Let me make an example. There's there across the country, there are several of these CREZ zones, CREZ, competitive renewable energy zones, out there where you get some government support to be able to put up windmills and solar panels and those kinds of things. So we've got opportunities out there that are just absolutely wonderful. We just completed the ones out in West Texas in 2012, and by 2014, those lines, those big high tension power lines that you see, not the lower ones that provide local power, but the big tall ones, were at 100% capacity coming out of the Panhandle and South Plains, moving down towards Austin, San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas. Now there's a problem lying that therein that lies that if you can't put any more power on those lines, why produce it? Because there's no place to go for it.
Yeah.
That's a serious issue we're dealing across the country. Let me give you another couple of facts. In 2022, the United States consumed 92.7 quadrillion BTUs of energy. 92.7 quadrillion BTUs. That's 12 zeros after the 92. That's a big number. To meet just the automobile demand that's been mandated by the federal and some state governments, we have to increase that number by 28%. Well, 28% of roughly 100 quadrillion BTUs is a stupid number. And add to that one more thing, and that is the AI push that we have coming in this country. Artificial intelligence requires about 40% more power than we are consuming right now. So we're pushing up to nearly 400 quadrillion BTUs of energy on power lines that are at full capacity. Folks, the federal government was so anxious to push electric and all electric world on you, they forgot that you have to have an entrance and a maintenance, and you have to be able to have a transition plan to be able to go to something different. They completely ignored it.
That's what I've been preaching. We've got to have a plan. And if you're a veteran, you know as well as I do, when you were in the military, you had a plan. You had a plan of the day. You had a plan. I don't see a plan. Now, I got to tell you the honest to God truth. And it's not just the Democratic Party. I didn't see a plan when they pulled out of Vietnam. I didn't see a plan when they pulled out of Iraq. I didn't see a plan when we pulled out of Afghanistan. These have been highly, highly detrimental. And that is part of the problem. We don't plan. Several years ago, Diane and I took a road trip from Dallas to Washington, D.C., to Philadelphia, down to Orlando, and back to Dallas. Every highway we were on, every highway was under major construction. The government put out, I can't, no earthly idea, and don't even want to look up because it'd scare me, how many billions of dollars in infrastructure. And they were saying, we've got to fix the infrastructure. We got to fix the infrastructure. There was no plan. They just put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in my opinion, is part of the disaster we have in terms of inflation. The other part of that, we're going to raise, and you were the one that told me, you were in a meeting in Washington. They said, we're going to force people into electric vehicles by raising the price of gas and diesel.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a diesel truck built in the world that can travel from Dallas to Los Angeles and back. Not going to happen. And carry a load. And now the Port of Los Angeles is saying you can't come into Los Angeles with a diesel 18-wheeler. Well, you know what? When they wake up to the fact that when that really takes effect, all the trucking and shipping leaves the Port of Los Angeles.
Well, and it's inflationary.
Have a huge economic impact.
And it's inflationary because what now has to happen is those ships that go to the Port of Los Angeles or, any of the ports on the West Coast, San Francisco, what ends up happening is they have to change their destination, and that costs more money.
Absolutely. So what we see and what I see as a certified senior advisor, in many cases, seniors don't have a plan. Like this guy I'm trying to help, he had no earthly idea about aid and attendance or the PACT Act or any of the benefits of being a veteran. So many people, you were talking to a guy that way. We've got to get people into a planning mode. So when we come back, we're going to talk more about that. This is Jim Blythe and my good friend Tim Snyder. And hey, Tim, we got to go have lunch next week. I know a great Mexican restaurant.
I'm in.
I know. You're from Lubbock, man. You guys know what good Tex-Mex is. Hey, we'll be right back after these words. And if the voice is bad, can't help it. Been a little bit sick. But I'm not there to infect anybody. I'm here for you.
Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show, and thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation.
Hey, this is Jim Blythe. With me, Tim Snyder, Matador Economics. We're talking about what should you do. So let's go back. We've talked about inflation. All you got to do is go to the grocery store or gas pump, take a look at your insurance bill, take a look at your heating electric bill. We got a serious problem, and it's creating a problem. Why they say, oh, we got super duper employment. Hey, those people can't pay their bills. I see it all the time.
Yep.
So we've got to get our politicians, both sides of the aisle, to work down the middle, to work at having a plan, a battle plan. And to me, Janet Yellen and the Fed saying, we're going to keep interest rates up. Well, who pays for that? We do. Who pays for that? The government, everybody. That's no plan. Now, that may be the only tool they think they've got. But to me, that's like when you got a flat tire, somebody handing you a pencil saying, you figure it out. So again, what were some of the things we said? Number one, if you're a veteran, take a look at your benefits. Take a look at the PACT Act if you qualify. Take a look for aid and attendance if you've got an elderly parent who's a veteran. If you're not and you're a young veteran coming out, take a look at getting job certifications. If you want to know one, man, there's one that we met with a guy here this last week. And Diane will correct me, or she'll put it up. Forge One, I believe, is it. There are trade schools that you can get and really improve your situation and get certifications. Tim, you got some other ideas?
Well, the first and foremost, people need to understand that the political process is not the same as our politicians, unfortunately, or our Constitution. The political process doesn't function with making sure that we have a plan called obtain, maintain, and direct. That's what we're missing in this whole thing. I've got a real good friend out in Lubbock, Texas, who's a U.S. congressman. Jody Arrington is his name. He and I've been buddies. He's a fraternity brother of my sons, both my sons. And Jody is the chairman of the House Budget Committee. And he's frustrated. He's as frustrated as he can be because the execution of these budget items when they pass a budget and do the things that they're needing to do, it gets politicized, Jim.
Yeah.
And that means that, like Social Security, it gives the government the right to be able to take funds from Social Security and use them in another area. It's like being able to say, you talked about you guys' trip to the East Coast, you and Diane going to the East Coast, and looking at the infrastructure that we have there. It's not having the plan. That's the thing that they pull out of the budget bill to make sure that they've got room for somebody else's pork. And say what you want. Don't be fooled by this. And your local congressman will tell you there are pet projects. We call them pet projects now because it's an easier word, but it's still pork. Okay. And that's what it's don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. I mean, we're assuming that the country believes that our congressmen are up there doing their job and doing the things they need to do. And we found ourselves now in a world where everything is fictitious and we don't even have facts anymore. We don't have truth anymore. We don't have honesty or an integrity anymore. And that is what's frustrating to me. Today is a day that they're celebrating in New York City with the Navy SEALs swimming from, I guess, Battery Park. They're swimming over to the Statue of Liberty, and then they're swimming back and then going to Ground Zero. That's leadership. And that's what we get from our U.S. veterans, Jim. And we're missing a lot of that. I'm so frustrated with the way the political process works. There's a word called parse, okay? And parsing means to maybe bend something to give a little bit more favorable look on, what things are. Instead of calling somebody an illegal alien, we parse that and we call them what Joe Biden called them visitors or something, or right. If you look at Tim, Hull's from Minnesota, and he talks about socialism is just it's your next door neighbor's opportunity to be neighborly, and we need to stop that business. We need to put our foot down and say, okay, enough is enough. A horse is a horse, of course, a horse. I mean, that's it. Period.
I heard my bride laughing in the background, and she is one very, very, very sharp woman that does her homework. And I'm very appreciative, both Diane and Nathaniel. I think these are important things. What you're saying is do your homework. Don't believe necessarily what you read or what you see, because it's all being agendized. Is that correct, Tim?
Yes, and don't let them off the hook. Get your congressman online and sit down with him face to face and say, okay, let's have this discussion. Let's be honest with each other here, and call it what it is and get it back to what reality is. Truth. I always laugh at this is what is either Superman or Batman, or it might even be Donald Duck. I don't know, but it's truth in the American way, and that's where we need to go.
Okay, I think we're at that point. I need to close with a prayer. Lord God, we thank you for this beautiful, wonderful day. We thank you for your hedge of protection around our active duty military, our first responders who run into the fire instead away from it. And Lord God, we're so thankful for our veterans, those who lead, those who are showing us the way, and those who gave it all to be part of this great nation and protect it. Thank you, Lord God, for all you do for us. This is Veterans Impact Show, and amen. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say thank you, Tim, for all you do in Matador Economics. And is there anything I can do for you?
No, sir. I'm here having fun on this old planet and just following the Lord's work.
Well, one of the things I want to say, if you're in an oil and gas company, or you're in a company that uses energy and you'd like to have an economic consultant, I don't know anybody more straightforward, more tuned in, and better than is Tim Snyder. And I tremendously appreciate him. And every day I get his email. Thank you so much, Tim Snyder. Thank you for being part of the Veterans Impact Show. We'll be back next week, and we're more healing. We're talking about help. We're talking about hope, and we're talking about healing our veterans. And we've got a conference on September the 6th. Come take a look at it. Diane is going to post that up as well. Thank you. Have a great, great day. We appreciate you.